Ready to dive into some seriously thought-provoking territory today? We're talking about the future, and more specifically, artificial intelligence. How do we make sure that this AI revolution actually leads to a brighter future for, well, everyone? Our guide for this deep dive is a book I found really intriguing, Bravery in Governance Towards a More Perfect Future. And it tackles this whole intersection of AI, how we govern it, and that quest for a better tomorrow.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? We always talk about AI as if it's this far off thing, but it's already so deeply embedded in our lives in so many ways.
Oh, absolutely. It's
Well,
kind of like we don't even notice it anymore. But it makes you wonder, are we becoming a little too reliant on these algorithms? I mean, think about it. Personalized recommendations, medical diagnoses even. It feels like AI is making more and more of our decisions for us every day.
and that's just scratching the surface, really. What we're seeing now is just the tip of the iceberg. We're on the verge of something way more profound, what experts are calling general AI.
Okay, now that sounds a little intimidating.
Imagine machines that aren't just capable of doing specific tasks, but of learning and problem solving across the board, almost like a human brain. This isn't about faster algorithms, it's about replicating like the very core of human intelligence.
Okay, that is a little bit mind-blowing when you really think about it, and maybe a little unnerving, right? I mean, we've all seen those sci-fi movies where AI takes over.
Right.
But, bringing it back to reality here, what does this mean for something like, say, the job market? Are we all going to be replaced by robots?
It's the big question, isn't it? And the book really delves into this, but instead of this doomsday scenario of everyone losing their jobs, it explores how AI could actually reshape industries and change what work looks like, not necessarily eliminate it altogether.
So not so much replacing jobs, but changing how we work.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I'm curious to dig into that a bit more. What else does this book sort of highlight in terms of AI's impact on, well, on society as a whole?
Well, it talks about this careful balancing act between encouraging innovation and setting up the right guardrails.
Because with any technology this powerful, I imagine there's always a risk of, unintended
Yes, it's
consequences,
right.
right?
Yeah, it's that balance, right? Like the excitement of new technology, but also the responsibility that comes with it, I guess.
Exactly. And that's where this whole idea of governance comes in. The book really stresses that we need to be really deliberate, really intentional about how we want to shape the future of AI. It's not something we can just let happen on its own.
Governance. Yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily a word that like gets you pumped up,
Mhm.
but I'm starting to see why it's so important when we're talking about something like this.
It's kind of like if AI has the potential to completely change how industries work, like we were saying, well, then we need to figure out who gets to set the rules, right? Who decides what's okay, what's not okay, what's ethical, and how do we make sure that all this amazing technology actually benefits everybody?
Right. Right. So are we talking about governments needing to step in and create like regulations? Because I know that's not always the most popular idea, especially in the tech world. It's not just about governments, though. What the book suggests is like a much more collaborative approach. It's about getting policymakers, researchers, industry leaders, even just regular people, all in the same room, all working together.
See, that sounds incredibly difficult. Like, how do you even begin to get all those different perspectives, all those different voices on the same page with something as complex as AI?
Oh, it's a massive challenge for sure. The book doesn't pretend like it's going to be easy.
Yeah.
There's this constant tension, right, between letting innovation happen and making sure that it happens responsibly. Like, how do we encourage progress but not stifle creativity with a ton of rules and regulations?
Finding that sweet spot
Yeah,
where things can move forward without, going off the rails.
exactly. And it gets even more complicated when you start to think about the global nature of all of this.
Because it's not like AI stops at any one country's borders, right?
Yeah. Right. This book really makes you think about what it even means to govern something like AI in a world where data is constantly moving across borders, where companies are building these incredibly powerful technologies on a global scale.
So it sounds like international cooperation is like absolutely essential.
100%. And the book argues that, we need to move beyond just each country doing its own thing. What we need are some global standards, some common ground, a real global conversation about the ethics of all this.
Which makes sense, because if one country just decides to, go all out with AI development, without any regard for the ethical implications, well, that's going to affect everyone, right?
It does, and that's what makes this so interesting. And the book has some pretty fascinating ideas about how we can even begin to do this. Like one of the things it talks about is AI taxation.
Okay, now that's not something I've ever really considered before. Like taxing robots?
Yeah.
How would that even work?
It's an idea that's starting to gain some traction. Basically, it's based on the idea that as AI and automation become more and more common, they're going to lead to huge increases in productivity. And they might even end up displacing a lot of workers. So how do we make sure that the benefits of all this new wealth get shared more evenly? That's where AI taxation comes in.
So the idea is that the money generated from taxing AI or automation could then be used to, fund things like social programs or job training for people who might be out of work because of these technologies, or even invest in things like education and infrastructure.
Exactly. It's about getting ahead of the curve, proactively addressing the potential economic and social impacts of AI instead of just reacting to them after the fact.
It's a really fascinating idea, but I can't imagine it would be easy to implement. I mean, how do you even begin to figure out how to tax something as complex and constantly changing as AI?
Right. It's not simple, for sure. And the book acknowledges that. There's no silver bullet solution here. The idea of AI taxation isn't meant to be the answer. It's more like a jumping off point, a way to start a bigger conversation about how we make sure that the benefits of AI are distributed more fairly.
This whole conversation has been really eye-opening. It seems like what this book is really pushing for is for us to think bigger about AI. It's not just about the technology itself, but about the impact it's going to have on society as a whole and what kind of future we want to build with it.
I think that's a great way to put it. It's not just a technical book about AI. It's a call to action. It's about all of us stepping up and engaging in this really crucial conversation.
It's almost like we're standing at this crossroads, right? With AI, I mean, it feels like we're on the verge of something huge, something really transformative, but it's not clear which way it's going to go.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great way to put it. It really is a crossroads. And the path we end up taking, it all depends on the decisions we make now, not just like as a society, but the choices that each of us makes every day.
So let's just say, for argument's sake, that we get it right, we figure out the governance, the international cooperation, all of that. What does that even look like? Paint me a picture. What's that ideal future?
Well, the book, it kind of envisions this future where AI isn't just about, efficiency or making things faster or even just automation. It's about using it to actually solve some of the biggest problems that humanity's facing.
Okay, I like where you're going with this. Give me some specifics. What kind of problems are we talking about?
Well, imagine a world where AI is helping us to develop clean energy solutions, like really tackling climate change head on, or using it to personalize medicine to the point where diseases that are incurable now are treatable.
Okay, see, now you're talking.
Yeah.
Those are some pretty lofty goals, right? It's hard not to be a little bit skeptical, though. I mean, that requires a level of global cooperation that, well, frankly, we haven't really seen before.
Oh, it's ambitious for sure. And the book, I mean, it doesn't shy away from that at all. There are going to be some big hurdles, some serious challenges to overcome. But what it argues is that ultimately they're not insurmountable.
So how do we get there then? If we're talking about AI as this tool for positive change, for good, what are the things that, what can each of us actually do to make that happen? What are the concrete steps?
Well, one of the most important things is, it seems simple, but stay informed. Don't just let all this pass you by. Actually take the time to learn about AI. What can it do? What are its limitations? Because the more people who actually understand this technology, the better equipped we'll all be to have, real thoughtful conversations about how it should be developed and how it should be used.
So it's about becoming more like AI literate, not just as, tech experts or whatever, but just as citizens.
Exactly. Have those conversations with your friends, your family, your coworkers. Talk about the ethics of AI. Ask questions about how it's being used in your workplace, in your community.
It's about starting small, having those conversations, and then building from there.
Yeah. And don't underestimate your own power as a consumer. Support the companies that are developing AI responsibly, ethically.
Putting your money where your mouth is, basically.
Exactly. And if you see something happening that doesn't seem right, say something. Contact your elected officials, support advocacy groups, make your voice heard.
This has been a really fascinating conversation. I've got to say, this book, Bravery and Governance, it's more than just a title, isn't it? It feels like a real call to action for all of us.
Yeah, and I think that's a great takeaway. The future of AI, it's not set in stone, it's being written right now, and we all have a role to play in how that story unfolds.
That's a great point to end on. So, to our listeners, we'll leave you with this. In a world that's increasingly being shaped by algorithms, how will you choose to use your own human agency? This has been The Deep Dive. Thanks for joining us.